All right, on this episode of Wicked High, we have a very special guest from San Diego, Bryan Buckley, the founder of HVGC. Thanks for coming, Bryan.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here. And congratulations on the show.
Thanks. And
Very
congrats
excited.
to you. We're really excited about all the stuff you have going on in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's been an uphill battle, but like everyone in this industry, but we're getting there, so all good.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about HVGC and what you're doing. We're really familiar with your products and your mission, but definitely want to spread that message and hear what you're up to.
No, for sure. I think like what it's really like makes me proud of like talking about this brand is where it all really came from. So when you serve as a Marine Raider, which is part of like Special Operations for America, we were in a place called the Helmand Province in Afghanistan. And when you serve there, you become part of the Helmand Valley Gun Club, and you get an HVGC tattoo on you. So when we were making this, we just wanted to make it like a military brand, kind of have our niche, and we threw HVGC up on the wall and came up with Helmand Valley Growers Company. So I wanted to talk to all the guys before we went forward and trademarked and did all this and explain what we were trying to do, and they all were cool with it, and they're like, can we get a job when we get out with you? And we're like, that's easy, no problem. But, you know, it's like in the beginning, we didn't really know how Afghanistan was going to play out and what we did there and what difference we made. Obviously, we all got a pretty hard lesson in August that I never thought I was going to be wrapped up into a Vietnam-esque type war, but apparently I am. So it's nice now that we can, maybe something good will come out of the Helmand Province, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about like those heroes who gave everything they had in the Helmand Province, and it's kind of like an homage to them and everything we did. And ironically, when we were there, why it was such a volatile area was they had the Helmand River Valley, and it's in the southwest part of Afghanistan. It's right up against Pakistan, and you have the Helmand River Valley, and they come up. The Taliban will leave Pakistan in the springtime, come up, tell the farmers to throw out all their poppy, and when it comes out and grows, they'll take it, cultivate it, manufacture into heroin. It's amazing, after Croptober, you see all the significant events drop because they all just walk right back down to Pakistan to chill out for the winter. But really, it was like opiates were fueling their insurgency, and we were fighting that, and now we're back here in America fighting the same problem of the opiate epidemic facing our veterans.
Don't we know about that?
Yeah.
So HVGC is basically a cannabis company that came out of your military history.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
cool. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your military background?
Sure. It was kind of, interesting how I got there. I played for like a really big high school football program in Pennsylvania, and I was getting recruited in my junior year by a Naval Academy. And my dad was like, oh my God, Naval Academy, all freaked out. And I'm like, I wanted to go to college, grow my hair long, drink beer, party, play football, and if I found the time, I'd go to class, right? And so I was like, listen, you can go to Naval Academy, I'm going to UMass. And so, we did that, and I was having a blast, and then 9/11 happened. And kind of like one of my, it was a weird day like it was for everyone. I woke up, I was the first one in the apartment to wake up, saw everything going, like the first tower was on fire. And I remember I thought of like 1993, and I'm like, I didn't think 93 was that bad. I literally thought they were playing like a tape from the first bombing. And then my buddy who was playing at Michigan called me up, and he was like freaking out. He couldn't get a hold of anyone back in our hometown. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And the next thing I saw the second plane fly into the tower, and you're like, whoa, like what is going on? Yeah, so...
Wild.
I went to a couple classes on campus. It was kind of, some teachers were there, some weren't.
What was that like being in class? I was at home that morning and remember specifically, but I'm curious what being on a campus, what that looked like.
It was interesting. Like, a lot of the classes were canceled. I was taking linguistics, and she still had the class, but it was like the most unproductive class. Like, she's like, hey, whatever's happening in New York is happening, and we were just kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, we have no idea what's going on. There was just so many things. So people were like walking out. It was just a very, like, kind of a blur of a day. But we had football practice. So I go down to the stadium, and I walk into the football complex, and we had like 3 big screen TVs in our locker room, and they're on, and we probably had like 13, 14 guys from New York City on our team who totally, you got to remind people cell phones were not what they are today. Like, everyone was attached to landlines. So they can't get a hold of anyone. And I jump up on a table to get taped up, and my trainer comes up to me, he's like, man, I don't think we tape up today. And I'm like, all right. So just went back, and we had those like cubby wooden lockers, so we're all kind of hanging out there watching TV. And our coach walks in, and he's like, hey, let's go out and have a quick whiz practice, which is just put your helmets on, just kind of get your fit. And one of the captains stood up and said, I don't think we should practice today, coach, with everything going on. And he instantly was like, that's fine. We're not going to practice then. He's like, guys, I'm in the same place you guys are. We really don't know what's going on. He's like, go home, call your loved ones, because you never know how the story ends. So we stopped at the beer store, grabbed a couple cases of beer, and just went back to our apartment and had CNN on like everyone else. And that's when they started showing the videos of people jumping out of the towers. So I remember watching a woman jump out, and she was literally holding her dress down. And it just kind of like, who knows who she was, whatever. But to me, it was just like, that was kind of America. Like, and I was thinking to myself, how shitty of a situation was she in where she thought, okay, I'm like 50 stories up, and I'm in this burning inferno, and the best chance I have is to jump out of this thing. And she went on her terms, and she did with dignity. So as corny as it sounds, I literally went into our bathroom, and I looked at myself, and I said, it's time for me to go earn my citizenship. And at that moment, I knew I was going to get into that fight. And ironically, someone interviewed my mom back in Philadelphia, and she's like, I'm just worried because somehow my kids going to get in this fight. And she goes, I don't know how, or don't know why. So I finished out.
Intuition.
Yeah, exactly. So I finished out the season, and a couple of my roommates, kind of, like Corey Potter, who works with Hellman Valley. We've known each other for like 36 years. Like we met when we were 5 on a football field, and we played every level together. And he just noticed something was different about me in the off season. I wasn't really like taking as intense in my workouts, and I was actually like running from campus with book bags and stuff like that. And he's like, "You're dropping weight. Like, what are you doing?" And we're all sitting at the bar. I'm like, guys, I'm done. I'm transferring out. I'm going to go get into the military.
Wow.
And so told my coaches. They were very supportive. And I went from 230 pounds to like 185 pounds and transferred to Villanova. And that's when I started doing like ROTC for 2 years and had to go through some things for the Marine Corps, like officer candidate school, like my summer of my junior year. And then once I graduated, I got commissioned and went down to Quantico, Virginia. Was there doing my schooling. I became an infantry officer. So once I graduated, they sent me to 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, which is in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Did a deployment to Fallujah, Iraq. And when I came back, they said, hey, you did a pretty good job. Why don't we try out for this thing called Marine Reconnaissance? I'm like, sure. Made that. 6 months later, I was right back in Iraq, working throughout the Al Anbar province, which is like western Iraq, so like Fallujah, Ramadi, and stuff. It was a pretty interesting deployment because I always tell people, I don't know if they remember, President Bush did a thing called the Surge, and it was people were getting like kind of ticked off. People were tired about war. And my battalion, when I was in 2nd 2-8, and another one called 1-6, we were like literally a coin toss who was going to stay another 3 months to kind of help out the Surge. 1-6 lost the coin toss, and we got to go home, which totally changed the trajectory of my life. It's kind of like those butterfly effect moments. But when I went back 6 months later, when I was thinking, man, I don't know, what are we doing here? Is it even working? Well, the Surge worked, and basically the sheikhs in Al Anbar got up and said, hey, we're not really crazy about these Marines, but these Al-Qaeda guys they're just doing murder intimidation campaigns. I mean, they did some really gnarly things to people, to the point we intercepted a letter from Osama bin Laden telling al-Zakari, who was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, he told him to back off. Like,
wow.
You're doing too much. If you got bin Laden saying you're going a little crazy, that should be like a moment right there, right?
Right.
So things were going great where we just started pushing them up, almost like herding the cattle, all the Al-Qaeda guys up to Kurdistan, which is northern Iraq. And they were just like, bring them to us. Let us do what we got to do. And that's kind of what we want to do, work ourselves out of a job. And, things were going pretty well there for a little while until we probably prematurely moved out. But when I came back from that, they said, hey, we just got into special operations. Why don't you go take selection? So about 250 of us went, and I think 20 or 30 of us made it. And I was one of the guys who made it and became a team commander. And then I did deployments into Africa a bunch of times, Southeast Asia, then obviously Afghanistan, and more in particular the Helmand province.
Wow.
Yeah.
Truly an incredible story and a perfect segue into how did you go from a special ops commander to running your own cannabis brand? Were you always a smoker or?
No, friends did, especially a lot of friends in college. It just never was my thing. I was always like an athlete, and I was just like, I didn't want to put like smoke in my lungs. I was kind of one of those guys. But I never had a problem with anyone smoking. I mean, you never saw anything crazy with someone smoking. They just kind of hung out, had a good time. I mean, it looked pretty good. So it was kind of like, once I got out, I started working for an ed tech firm. It was a great job, and I learned a lot, but it just wasn't very fulfilling. And it was like, I'm not going to do this forever. And that's when I really started seeing what was happening with our veterans as a active duty transition to veteran life. And there wasn't a lot of support for them. So I started a nonprofit called Battle Brothers Foundation. And I wanted to create it into like a holistic approach of like personal, medical, and economic. So personal, if you're getting ready to transition out, you partner with a veteran who has, and they can kind of be a big brother, big sister, just talk to you. Medical side, we did VA disability claims. We would help out guys and girls that they're suffering with opiates, alcohol, post-traumatic stress, all the above. We got them into treatment centers. And then we were doing the economic phase of just doing job placement, like finding them a job. So hopefully we hold them back from making a mistake they can't come back from. Mm-hmm. And then during this, I mean, I'm 100% disabled and I've been shot up and all that stuff. And I was just having a real hard time sleeping and it was just uncomfortable. And that's when someone's like, listen, why don't you try some cannabis? And, you know, the anxiety was there. You're like, oh man, like, you know, you kind of retire life, like that's bad. And I tried it and it was the first night, like my mind went to peace and I don't know how many years when I finally got some sleep. Wow. And it just made that big of a difference. So I started thinking like, hey, there's a lot of great veteran advocacy groups out there, but obviously we're missing some sort of gap with people on Capitol Hill. So I talked with a couple members of Congress, said, what do you guys need? And they're like, if you can get data and get American doctors, you're going to have a good argument. So we decided to say, well, why don't we get into this and start doing cannabis research? Mm. And we kind of were bouncing around, and I was trying to work with people, and I finally met a great guy named Alain Blott out of Niamedic Healthcare and Research Services up at a UCLA Cannabis Symposium. And Niamedic has been doing cannabis research for over 20 years now in Israel. He was a sergeant major in the Israeli Defense Force, so he totally got it. He has post-traumatic stress. And that's when he said, he's like, you're going to need to get a thing called an institutional review board, or no one's going to take your stuff serious, and they're really expensive. And really, it kind of came from like a Paul Newman salad dressing bottle where we're like, 100% of profits to charity, and talk to the lawyer and the CPA. And I'm like, what if we start like an adult use brand here and we just get it out there and we donate 100% of our profits back to what we're doing? And they're like, you totally can do that. So that's when the concept of Hellman Valley Growers Company came up. And, so screw it, we'll just fund our own, do it ourselves.
So, quick question. You mentioned that you're 100% disabled. Mm-hmm. Julie and I are pretty familiar with that aspect, but for the people listening, can you talk a little bit about that and how cannabis helps? I know you mentioned it helped you sleep and a little bit with anxiety, but I feel like it could be quite a bit broader in your circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone's different. Right. For me, if you really tallied up all my disability percentages, I literally think I'm at like 360% disabled. I mean, they max out 100, obviously. So I have shrapnel behind both knees, steel plate in my ankle, some shrapnel throughout my body. When I was shot, I actually got shot throughout pretty much the left side of my body up to my head. So I have a traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress. I got arthritis. I mean, my back, everything, all of my joints and all that stuff. I was just back in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago and it was raining and it's like, the pain. I was like, man, I'm swelling up. Like I was like a weatherman. I'm like, it's gonna rain tomorrow. Like I feel it, like literally. But
and what helps you with that specifically?
It's just cannabis at nighttime. Mm-hmm. I'm not really a daytime consumer or anything like that. For me, it's kind of like as soon as I start smoking, I'm just kind of in a relaxed mode at that point, and I'm just gonna check out and just kind of just enjoy it, right? So for me, it was really just like the sleep time. Like as soon as I come back from work. I remember I was pissed off about something one night, and I'm on the phone with my lawyer, and I'm just walking around smoking my vape pen, and I'm like kind of calming down. He's like, "Are you smoking?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Good." Yeah. He's like, I'm like, "I don't even know what I was pissed off about." He goes, "Yeah, exactly." I'm like, "All right." So it's like so great. It's like a reset button. So it just helps me really with the sleeping aspect. I think it's definitely a cleaner lifestyle than going out to the bars. I mean, now it's just so much part of our culture, and I'm not like knocking it. Like we had
especially our
blast.
Generation.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally we would deploy for 7 months, and we came back, and we were land pirates. Exactly. I mean, we were in the bar, we're having a good time, and then by the time I was getting ready to deploy, we're like, we probably need to get out of the country for a little bit, let this settle down, and hit the reset button.
And you went to UMass Amherst, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to do up there except play sports.
Yeah, it was I was just talking to a couple of my buddies who were visiting up there, and it was like we would start Thursday nights. Friday, they'd actually put us in the campus hotel for home games because they didn't want us out drinking like they just do.
Knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, so home and away games were in hotels. And then Saturday, win or lose, you still booze. And then like Sunday, they would have us, we'd have to do like sprints around the field. And they just had trash cans and everyone's just throwing up. And they're like, get the weekend out of you. Like you can smell the booze everywhere. Go watch films, get yelled at, and then we're right back at the bar for Sunday Night Football drinking. And then Monday's our day off, so we would have like afternoon cocktails, and then I think like Tuesday, Wednesday, we kind of like kept it like pretty normal, and then start back up again. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it wild what you could do at that age?
Oh my God! I mean, I remember after spring ball, which sucks, but as soon as spring football was done, it was like nonstop. I mean, I stayed up there for an extra 2 weeks, and I was done my finals. I was just partying, So it was like, why am I walking away from this place? So yeah, UMass is where where I went to college. I just say Villanova is where I graduated from. Villanova got a little more intense. Like When I got there, I'm looking for my Scantron test, and they hand me like a blue book. I'm like,
What's
I can't
happening?
have a cannabis. Like, what's going on? Like, you want self-thought? I'm like, oh my God. So I actually had to start studying a little bit. So that was definitely a kind of a culture shock. But,
Yeah.
in the long run, it was a good thing. So
And where are you from originally?
an area called Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
we're like 20 miles south of, or 20 miles north of Philly.
So we've got a bunch of East Coasters on this couch, all with
Yeah.
San Diego
Yeah.
working in cannabis.
Well, it's tough. I mean, we're in the East Coast, and you come out here, you're like, I mean, minus the taxes, but you're like, why the heck would I leave? I mean, the
Why
weather's
would I
great
ever?
here, so it's a fun area.
Yeah, we all find each other.
Yeah,
Now we're all
absolutely.
sitting on a couch talking
I know, and
about
San Diego's such, I mean, no offense to LA and San Fran, but man, I love San Diego. It's just such a more
Same.
relaxed area. Like, no one's really cares about personal stuff, just everyone's pretty good people down here, so it's just a great area to be in.
Absolutely. I also want to ask you, you talked about how you smoke. You've been smoking the pen on that call you told us, but what is your preferred method of consumption?
I like to kind of change it up. For me, having kids, like, vape's very convenient.
Yeah.
And I can kind of be like the other night I was like smoking out my window, and my son walks in, like,
It's nothing.
but it's like, I mean, I was outside smoking one time. My wife's cracking up. She's like, "You smell like a dorm room," and I'm like, and I did get to talk. Like, my kid's like, "Is there a skunk outside?" I'm like, I knew that was gonna happen.
Oh my God. So my daughter figured out a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and she came up to me and she's like, now I know why I always smelled skunk. And I'm like, well, you were bound to figure it out
I
eventually, but
know.
you forget, because when they're little,
Oh, yeah.
they'll say things like that and you just kind of laugh and you're like, whatever. And this was a different time. I think
For
if I had
sure.
children now, I would just be really upfront and open about
100%.
it now, because times have changed. But my daughter's, 21, so it was a very, very different time.
Exactly, and like my wife and I talked about that because I had to do a speaking engagement out in the Ozarks in Missouri this summer.
Oh.
Yeah, so but it was cool, and my wife came and we had a good time, and I'm like, I'd like to bring the kids on these things because it kind of stinks. Like, we're all like, I'm so busy with work, and then we're traveling and all that. I'm like, who cares? I'm just gonna eventually tell them, like, this is what Daddy has to do, and this is his medicine, and just be very open with them.
Right.
Because when you try to hide things, that's when they get curious and they kind of like, well, what is this stuff? And
Well,
God
not
knows
only
what they'll
that,
do.
but it's like we drink a beer or a glass of wine in front of our kids,
Not a
and
big
it's
deal.
totally normal. And
Yeah.
my daughter personally is not a big. For me personally, my daughter's not a big drinker,
Yeah.
but she is a pretty heavy smoker,
Yeah.
cannabis consumer, and I feel much more comfortable with that. She's
I'm with
the
you.
first person really in the family to not be
Yeah.
a big drinker, so it's interesting kind of watching that progression
And-
and just the way society has progressed.
You're right, and that's such a great point because I can't get into too specifics, but we're working with you have like those VSOs, like you hear about like the American Legions and the VFWs and all those, like their bars. And really, what kind of hit what we say like the GWAT era, like the global war on terrorism, like us, like our generation. We've had a lot of issues with alcohol, and a lot of veterans don't really want to go into those spots because you kind of go in there, they're dark, you can smell the whiskey, and
trigger.
just bad things happen. And so, I mean, I know they're hurting on recruitment, so we're actually working with some locally here where we're trying to see if we can get dispensary and make them into consumption lounges. Because I'm like,
Cool.
one, it's just a better thing for the veteran, It's like I've been around a lot of people who smoke, and I've been around a lot of people who drink. And when people smoke, they're like, I'm high, I probably need an Uber. If someone's drinking, they become immortal. Like, I can drive 90 miles per hour and we'll be fine.
Right.
It's a whole different thing. So I'm like, one, it's going to be better for the veteran. Two, it's going to help your guys' recruitment out because then you're going to have vets who might want to come here and just split a joint with someone and kind of shoot the breeze. And that's totally cool.
And
it's
help people with post stress.
absolutely do education things and all that stuff. So we're actually making a lot of headway on that, which I can't wait to tell you guys about
Yeah,
it. But
excited.
it's like moving. I'm optimistic, but I'm kind of pessimistic on this
National
one.
city,
yeah,
maybe?
well, it's actually it'll blow your mind. Actually, I was literally in the room with the people.
All right, well, maybe
And,
you can share when
yeah, we
we're
were
off
off air.
Off
I
air.
gave a speech, and they're like, "Yeah, we're doing this," and I'm
Exciting.
like, "Okay."
You're
So
doing some
exciting.
huge things in the industry, so
Well, it's just great.
congratulations to you.
Well,
You're
I
really
appreciate
spreading
that.
a huge message.
But it's been just really cool, just I think with like meeting like you guys, and we all like the whole community helps each other out. Like when I first got in here, you just think like competition, like I need to knock that guy off the shelf, that off
It's
the
the
shelf.
opposite.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like everyone wants to help unless you're a bad actor, and then it's like no, we're gonna kind of take care of that because they're doing this for all the wrong reasons. And
Totally.
even how when we got into this, with guys like George and Cody Sadler who sold Platinum Vape and now they're starting a new brand called Gelato. They brought us in and they wanted to help us out with donations to Battle Brothers, and then I kind of pitched Hellman Valley to them, and they were like, "Get in here, we're going to back you guys up." And we were probably one of one brands in the nation that could put something on the shelf for $0. I mean, they're like, "Just make us whole when you sell." And they're like, and we're good, and we don't want any of the profits. And
wow.
we were able to kind of get things going that way. So
that's huge.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
Like, I mean, I don't know who else has that story. So,
Right.
you know, it's pretty nuts. So it's just, we're very blessed and fortunate to be where we are, for sure.
You've also worked really hard to
Yeah.
get where you are.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, that's just kind of, you know, I thank my parents for that. I mean, I'll never forget the time my dad kind of sat me down. He goes, I have money. You don't. And he's like, and I'm like, all right. And he's like, you're never going to be the smartest guy. You're never going to be the strongest. And he's like, you're never going to be the fastest. But one thing you can control is your work ethic. And he's like, if you outwork people, good things will happen to you. And I'll show you how to do that. And he, you know, it was every weekend out there building some project.
Wow.
So, yeah, he kind of put that into us.
Yeah, and I want to commend you, like Marissa was saying, for all the work you've been doing in especially the government side and just the political realm when it comes to cannabis. And in the military community, I think that's also what's really exciting about you moving some of these recruitment events is kind of getting that taboo out a little bit. And we talked about the shift in culture, but it's a whole other world when you get into the military and the politics and the government. It's still worse than just kind of mainstream culture.
They're really behind.
Right.
But, you know, I always say things, like, when I told people what I was doing, like, wanted to do in 2016, I had, like, a couple Marine generals and colonels just get, like, the cockeyed eyebrow, like, what? Like, you know.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, well, just hear me now and believe me later. And as we got through things, and then once we got that IRB and it kind of went, like, national, and, I mean, I was getting calls from all these people, and they were like, you know what you were doing in the beginning, I just thought was crazy, but now I'm like, we're so happy with what you're doing. And one colonel said he got up and he was talking to a couple of people in Congress, and he's like, I never thought I'd do this, but he's like, I stood up and he's like, we need to do more cannabis research, and we need to get a hold of my guy Buck out in California. And that's when people on the East Coast started reaching out to me. And, you know, now I'm fortunate to work with both Democrats and Republicans in both the House and Senate, just trying to work things. And for me, it's great. Like we were talking earlier, it's like you watch Fox, you watch CNN, and it's just like everyone hates each other.
Yeah.
Well, when you actually, like, that's just a 24-hour news cycle. They got to do something. Like,
Right.
We're all pretty cool with each other. We're just trying to figure out the best way to get this done. So.
Well, and that's why podcasts, I think, are so huge right now, because people are looking for alternate sources of information and conversations, and we're all very tired of just having the same opposite narrative shoved down our throats. So
Totally.
I appreciate you coming and sitting down and talking with us. We've had some really cool private conversations,
For sure.
the three of us, and I'm just really excited for people to be able to hear what you're doing.
Oh, wow.
Now, my next question is, where would you like to see cannabis head? Like, what's your vision, and what would you like to see happen in the next year or two?
You know, in the next year or two, I think there is some low-hanging fruits, and this is, again, when it becomes political. I mean, I've talked to a couple of politicians, and I'm like, what about the Safe Banking Act? And they're like, that's there. It could pass right now. They're like, but this is when politics come in.
Right.
They're like, we got a midterm coming up. Chuck Schumer is trying to throw a Hail Mary bill out there, which is terrible, with a 25% federal tax, which would just crush the cannabis community.
Which we're already
getting taxed out, right? So, but he wants to get that done, and then they're like, you know, probably come September, maybe August, that's when they'll put things on the floor, because they're going to want to get a vote, and they're going to want to put people on the record, and they're going to want to take more seats, and that is the house of cards we live in. You're like, we got to suffer.
Right.
So I think Safe Banking Act, I think is something that we'll see probably soon. I would imagine in the next maybe 16 months or so. I wouldn't be surprised. I think interstate commerce might be on the fringe, kind of getting there. And I work with a great group called the Veterans Action Council. And it's a bunch of vets. We're all different parts of the country, and everyone has like kind of their like specialty. Like one guy, Michael Krawitz, was an Air Force vet in Vietnam. He's in Virginia. He actually worked with the UN to get them to remove cannabis from the 1971 treaty, so cannabis is no longer internationally illegal. Now, with that being said, we as a country, we follow international law with some things, and cannabis should be followed. And the General Secretary sent a letter out in early 2001, because this thing passed, I think, December 2nd, 2020, they removed it. And nothing's happened here in America, so we're going to write a letter to the Attorney General, basically say it's time for you to do your job, and we're going to put it out in the press of cannabis needs to be rescheduled, and it should be down, 5, 4, okay. But the way this administration is gearing it is they're going to want to go to a Schedule 2, which again would be really problematic for the community, because every dispensary, you're going to have a pharmacist in there, and you're going to have to pay a pharmacist, and they're very expensive. So it's almost like, forget that. So we're just trying to get to a point where I think you'll start seeing things tick down a little bit down to scheduling, hopefully get it totally unscheduled, but that will open up a lot more research and stuff. But, if you ask me, the one thing I think will happen first, I think safe banking is going to happen.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, and then we talked a little bit about this, right? Everyone in the industry wanting to help each other and just kind of how you meet these really interesting people. But we love to ask our guests what their favorite part of cannabis culture is.
For me, the favorite part, I think it really is the community. I know it's such a big answer to it, but just some of the great people you've met. There's really not, like I said, the bad actors kind of gets weeded out quickly, right? No pun intended. But it's been so cool, and for us, how open people are. Like, people are always like, hey, we want to do a collab, we want to do this. And it's not like just for marketing reasons, but they're like, we want to do something to help out your nonprofit. What can we do? And these are technically competitors.
I mean, you're here. We don't have any listeners, so.
Yeah. We'll work on that. We'll get there. But stuff like that's just been really cool. And just, I think I'm just intellectually curious a lot, and just learning so much of what this plant can do and the untapped potential. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I'll go out there and say it. I think it's going to help with cancer. I mean, not just help people get through chemo. I think it's actually going to reduce cancer and be potentially a cure for it in certain ways. So it's just really exciting to be kind of not in a tipping point. You got to look at everyone kind of back in the legacy days, really the people who kind of grinded it out to get to the spot where it is right now.
Yeah, shout out legacy.
Yeah, but with everything kind of on tipping point with our nation, overwhelming support, it's going to be kind of cool for all of us to run across that finish line and kind of finish what they started.
Isn't it interesting, especially for our generation, just how much it's changed, where we all grew up on the East Coast and come from a generation where you would literally get arrested for a joint. Like, you could have a dime bag on you and you were going to get arrested for that. And now I'm selling millions of dollars of weed a year.
It's crazy, and that's why you got to say to the President of the United States,
it's wild.
Why don't you go out there and just pardon these people? Because we literally are doing what people are sitting in jail for.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember a friend of mine, he was in Philly, he had a roach. And he was walking through a park, in the nighttime, cops stopped him, found this thing. God. Instead of just stomping it out and say, all right, carry on with your day, threw him in jail. And he was in jail for 2 days. His parents didn't know where it was. He had to wait for the judge. He had to do a video teleconference. And it was are you kidding me?
And there's some great organizations fighting that.
Yeah.
For sure. Shout out 40 Tons, some friends of ours, but they're putting in a lot of that work to help people who have been convicted of cannabis crimes.
Yeah.
And wild story, but isn't it such an interesting thing to see how much it's changed? And then also this country was built on taxation without representation.
Oh, yeah.
And here we are doing exactly that. I pay federal and state taxes.
Yeah.
But what I do is technically illegal.
Exactly. It's the most
wild.
bizarre
and people
thing.
don't realize that. They're like, wait, so you can't go to Arizona, or I can't fly? I'm like, you can do whatever you're going to do, but you need to learn what's federally illegal and what's not. And the second you cross state lines, you're committing a federal crime. The second, and there's so many other things. Border Patrol has jurisdiction that others don't because they're federal agencies.
Yeah.
So people don't realize that if you get pulled over by Border Patrol, even in California where cannabis is quote unquote legal, it's up to the discretion of the agent that you're with if you go to jail or not.
Yeah.
Border Patrol can also pull you over within a certain amount of miles of any international lines, which we all know, San Diego, LA, all of that is in. I think it's 100 miles. Also 100 miles of any coast. So we're just sitting in this really funky area, especially in Southern California, of this gray area.
Well, I'm glad I gave you all my products. I'm scared to get in my car after this one.
Isn't it interesting? Because we sit here and we openly talk about being involved in cannabis, and obviously all three of us are very pro cannabis on this couch, and for very different reasons and in very different ways. But it's so many people aren't aware because we're talking about politics and we're talking about what needs to be changed, and I find it so interesting that people don't realize that it's still federally illegal, so technically federal overrides state in some ways.
Oh yeah, it's really crazy. People, some of my friends who are back in Philly and stuff, they think you get in cannabis and you're just a millionaire overnight. And I'm like, well, if I was doing it illegally, probably I'll do pretty well.
When are we going on vacation?
But it's you look at 280E and you try to explain that to people and they're like, what's that?
Right.
And I'm like, it is, I have 4 companies within one company. It's all legal, but I have to move things around because I don't get tax credits for, employment, this, and that. It's nuts. And and the banking side, it's
they want shut down, your credit card shut off.
Wells Fargo or Citibank, they want the business, but there's no FDIC approval, so they're like, we can't touch it, and it's just a whole quagmire. I mean, say what you will about President Trump, but literally, if someone said this is how these things work, he goes, wait, for legal businesses they have to do what? And he's like, I'm a businessman, that makes no sense. Now it's kind of wait, something going to happen, and then it never did. But you're like, man, if they just move this thing to a Schedule 3. that would kill 280E right then and there, and we could just have a normal business.
Well, and we're still sitting on the current president to make change. I mean, we're just waiting, right? I mean, people are putting in a lot of work, and shout out to you for being one of the people that really, really puts the work in with the legislators and the research and everything else. Very, very amazing stuff.
It's needed. It's scary, the lack of education that you see at that level. And I was talking with, I sit in a veteran advisory board for one Democratic representative, and she was asking me, like, what about the MORE Act? And I'm like, no way. And she's like, why? I'm like, you're going to have 100% disabled veteran, spend at least half of their disability payment just to get their medicine. And some probably have to spend it all. And she goes, what about Chuck Schumer? And I'm like, no way. I'm like, a 25% federal tax? And I'm like, we're here in California, the consumer's paying anywhere between 40 to 60% tax. I mean, insane. The seed gets taxed 12 times on its trip to that person who's going to consume it in whatever form. And her eyes popped out. And she goes, I'm a Democrat. I'm supposed to like taxes. But she's like, I'm also a businesswoman. She goes, that is insane. And I'm like, and that's where you look at what Representative Mace, who's out of South Carolina, Republican, she put a 3% federal tax. That's doable because you're going to eliminate 280E and you'll have some other benefits that come along with it. But again, where they're sitting there saying, oh, just tax cannabis, they got plenty of money. It's like, no, guys, hold on here. So I don't know who's talking to him. I'm a little afraid who's talking to him. Some of the big firms and stuff like that might be just trying to squeeze out the little person. So whatever we can do, just kind of say, hey, all of us over here, don't forget about us. People really making the difference.
Yeah, that brings me to a question. I was just wondering, and just your opinion, we can cut this out if you don't want to include it, but in your opinion, do you think that it is more the lack of education? Is it more political? Is it money? Like, what do you think is really that barrier?
I think it's a mixture of all three. It's like, as you look at in terms of the education, some they just don't have it. And, the government, when the founding fathers made our government, they were not expecting someone to stay in Congress for like 40 years. I mean, they were literally like, you go to be a House of Representatives for 2 years, and you go back to your farm in Massachusetts and kind of live life. Like, the House of Representatives is supposed to be us, like people who've been there, done that, just saw how it is out there. This is what we need to do. Senate was a little bit more of a backbone, but you got these people who just live in their bubble in D.C. It's a real thing. You got to look at things too about how do they get elected. Well, they get elected with people with money. Who has a lot of money? Pharmaceutical people have a lot of money. I was speaking at a Republican congressman's dinner one time. It was an intimate setting, like 20 of us, and I brought up what we want to do, and there was two pharmaceutical higher-ups right there, and you could feel the tension between us, where they just stared at us and we stared at them, and the politician's like, well, like, he's like, I got veterans, I got pharmacists, what am I going to do here? And, unfortunately, you won't probably see a big churn until pharmaceuticals will be like, yeah, it's profitable and we can make money and do this. And it's going to take us to get to work to get it there. And they're going to come in and lop up things. And then politicians will be like,
they're already positioning
we're good.
Themselves.
Absolutely they are. So it's happening. Everyone's moving their chess pieces. Yeah.
But that's why I think these types of conversations are so important, especially if you're not in the cannabis community, because we need the public to start talking like this so that their constituents are concerned about the industry as well, and it's not just people who are in it. What I mean?
Exactly.
Because that's what's going to push.
And it's a great point, because I don't think a lot of people get it. They're still trying to comprehend, like, okay, I'm for cannabis.
Right.
They're kind of coming around there, but they don't know all like what's going on behind the curtain. And I don't know. I don't know if they're ever going to get there and kind of understand, because until you don't get it until you're actually doing it, and then you're like, oh, like, it's like, cool, I'm in cannabis, having fun, meeting great people, but boy, what a pain in the ass this is sometimes, just dealing with everything.
What is it for every year that you're in cannabis is 5 years in any other job? So
that's why I said, I was like,
I'm congratulating each other. Like, congrats on your 20th year.
I know.
Like 4 years.
I feel like I'm aging like a president. I'm like, should take a before and after shot of me, and it's been like, oh my God, I got aged miserably. But but it's all worth it, because we know at the end of the day what this will do. So it just takes some revolutionaries to sometimes just pick it up, say, fuck it, and we're going to make this happen, and that's what we're going to do. And that's what I love about this country. It's like, you literally say, hey, I think this is bullshit. I'm a huge capitalist. I'll just go take care of it myself, and let's go. And eventually they'll follow up. I mean, it's a great opportunity. But like anything, it's like it always comes down to hard work. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, we're so appreciative that we have people like you with access, especially behind the curtain, to a lot of the stuff, the inner workings that's going on, because we need that, and we need people that aren't going to give up, and you're obviously not giving up.
No, I've not taken a salary since 2016, and we're just pushing through. And I know at the end of the day what this is. I mean, this is the most important mission of my life, and I've done things. I can go make money, and I don't sound like a jerk, but I can do that if I want to. And that, I was my other job. It was great. I was getting paid 6 figures. It was a really nice lifestyle.
But
But
this is your passion.
I wasn't fulfilled.
Right.
I'm like, that's not my thing. And it's kind of cool too, because, you always want to leave the next generation better. And, I wanted, like, my kids, I'd rather they don't know about my military stuff. I think my youngest is going to be Marine. Like, you find him in the middle of the night with a blanket and, like, his water gun next to him. Whatever we created. But, I think it'll be a nice legacy that we all get to leave to our, like, kids and stuff, and what we did, and kind of like, hey, I got my ass kicked for like 6 or how many years this is going to take to get done. But if you want to get something done, you can do it. And
Right.
let them kind of go that path and kind of make an example.
And speaking of that, where do people go to find more about you specifically and personally? Also, Hellman Valley Grower Company.
Yeah.
And where can people find your products?
Yeah, so if you go to www.hvgcompany.com, we have a little map tracker on there where it'll let you know. We even have a thing where you can plug in your zip code and it'll let you know where the closest dispensary is. So we're in about like 80 or so right now. We're about to make a really big push starting for March 1, where we want to kind of double that right now with a kind of a new sales force and kind of get things out there a little bit more. Encourage people to go check out Battle Brothers site at battlebrothersfoundation.org if you want to help donate to us. Like I said, we do a holistic approach of everything. We also do cannabis research, which we definitely need help on the funding side. And then, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Bryan Buckley, whatever, Hellman Valley. I'll probably pop up somewhere and
Awesome.
come check it out. So, for sure.
And are you guys statewide, or are you mostly in Southern California?
Yeah, we're statewide.
Cool.
Yeah. So we got some
awesome.
real big
So
accounts
go
up
check
in
this
NorCal.
brand out, guys.
Yeah. Please. Yeah. Like I said, 100% of our profits goes right back to fund research. So.
Are there
we
any
need
other
your help.
cannabis companies doing that? You're the only one that I'm familiar
I think
with.
we're the only ones that I've heard of. So, but again, it's great. Like, a lot of people want to collab and do things, and what can we work together? And we did great stuff with the Albert Einsteins with El Blunto. We've done a couple things where we've done a Battle Brothers Zippo. We did a nice 5 El Bluntos, a nice case for Battle Brothers Foundation,
Cool.
and they were donating money back through that. So it's just really cool to kind of different revenue streams come in for our foundation. It's been really big.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Jules.
Okay.
On this segment of You're Not Ganja Believe It,
We are going to talk about a brand new product coming from HVGC. Right now, they are mainly in oils and flour, but they're working on a little bit of an ancillary product. So I'm going to let Bryan tell you about it.
Yeah, no, we're really thrilled. We hope to get this out in the beginning of March, and it'll kind of celebrate our 2nd year anniversary of being in the market. So, last year we did military challenge coins. So this one we got a great packaging for it, but it's from a company called Prepax out of Massachusetts, and it's a chillum. So no one in California has this one yet. And the guy, his great story, his name's Pete, and he literally found us at Hall of Flowers, and he was weird. He turned to our booth, he goes, "Oh my God, it's you guys." And
I found Pete at Hall of
Yeah.
Flowers too.
And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like,
Wait, is Pete the guy with the little pre-hit?
Yes.
the Prepax, yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
This is
God.
So
hilarious.
you guys, so we're
Yes.
Also met him at Hall of Flowers.
Yeah, so we were like, all right, and I started looking. I'm like, well, tell me more
Shout
about
out
it.
Pete.
And he's like, listen, it's made in America. I'm like, well, that's great because I'm tired of dealing with all the things we got to do. And he's like, listen, some of the big companies in California are looking at this. He goes, we really didn't know what we had. They launched it, I think, before COVID. And now I think they're in 13 states. So he said, we're kind of avoiding California on purpose, and now we want to get in. So we're just finalizing everything, getting those in, and we're going to start packing those out and get them out. So
Very cool.
I think it's super great. So much fun branding-wise, what you can do on the chillum itself.
They're cool and they're
my God.
reusable.
They're reusable
Clean
and everything.
it,
So
you
we're going to
have
have
a
more
nice
flour
little
coming out
box,
with
yeah.
that, where you can repack. And then we're going to do cool little, like I said, we have a 2nd year anniversary coming out. That'll be available for 13,000 units. We'll go back to our original stuff for Christmas or for Easter. I'm going to do one or we'll have 2,000 out there that are going to look like Easter eggs. And if you get one, you get special prizes
wow.
from HVGC. You
That's
post
cool.
on Instagram, we'll find you and mail
I
stuff
love
out.
that.
So it's just such a cool, flexible thing. And it's very convenient for people because pre-rolls have issues sometimes.
Yep.
Even think about people snowboarding. You don't want to carry a pre-roll with you. You want a little chillum. You kind of do your thing and have fun. So I think it's going to be super fun.
At home and
Aren't they great?
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, we took them back
They're really
that
great.
night. He gave them to me. We went back to our place in Palm Springs, and I was like, "All right, we got a winner."
And
We'll do this.
especially people that are still very COVID cautious.
Yes.
It's a nice way for people to be able to consume at events without feeling like they need to share and or whatever. It's
Exactly.
we're in a weird space right now.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they're the perfect amount. I remember when I hoarded them after BizCon when you gave them to us. And then I had them all at home, and I was like, oh, I'll probably go through these in 2 hits, right? But it's a full bowl of weed at the top.
Oh my God, yeah.
How
So
much
it's a lot.
do they hold?
It's like a half
Half
a gram,
gram?
a little bit more maybe, but
Right,
it's
which is
like someone's like,
joint.
what are these, like one hitters? I'm like, if that's a one hitter for you, you're the official spokesperson.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's like good luck.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know what
Literally.
you're doing and what your lung capacity is, but
Oh
I'm
my God.
impressed.
So true.
Yeah.
Yay. So stay tuned for those. We will definitely keep you guys posted when they're finally released. So on this segment of Jays with Jay, we are going to be smoking an HVGC pre-roll. It is a sativa cotton candy skies. Yum. 1 gram. Let's hit it.
Because like with a cigar, right? You always have to do the whole thing. I think I just like naturally start doing that all the time. I usually just kind of light on the outside.
Yeah,
when I start
same.
Smoking, so
There's a really funny...
probably look cool if I did the whole thing like that, the cowboy look. But
No, but
just get
I do
pulled
it
off.
too. Ooh, I like this a lot.
If it has
And this is a
if
big
it's
boy.
twisted with the paper at the end, I do it like that. If it's not, I put it in my mouth. And I
Oh, okay.
This is a big boy. I like it. I like it a lot.
This is rolled really well.
Nice.
Because
Yeah.
it's not, I hate when they're too tight. This
I know.
And it's burning super evenly.
Yeah, no, they do a pretty nice job of that.
This is really good. Really
Yeah, is
good.
it hand rolled or do you have a machinery?
We have machinery.
So this is going to be
Wow, so
cotton
it's
candy
great
sky
machinery, yeah.
sativa. It's going to be a 1 gram pre-roll jewelry. Why am I calling you jewelry?
That's why I didn't want
That's
to
good
say
stuff
helmet.
right there.
See, this is why I
It's
don't
like, ugh.
And dried sock. But this is going to be an outdoor flower.
Yeah.
Cool. A little sun-grown.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, and now we need to hear, Bryan, about the first time you got high.
First time I got high was probably, it had to be like 2016. Trying to think. God, I'd probably say like mid 2016, and that's really the first time someone sat me down and was like, dude, try some cannabis. And it took me a little, like, I'd be like, oh God, like I was saying, like a little anxious. And then I did, and I was like, holy fuck. Like, it just felt.
Where were
joints.
you? What did you smoke out of?
It was a vape pen, and someone gave me a cartridge. I was at my house, so I was like kind of did it by myself.
Yeah.
And it just got me. And
I feel like that's a great start. A cartridge.
Yeah.
It's not like overpowering.
well, you
with the
feel it
smell
right in your
and-
frontal lobe, like you kind of get it. Like,
Right.
okay, I'm there, you're good. But yeah, everything is like loosened up, and I felt good. I was just euphoric, and like I said, like my mind went to peace. Like, because I suffer with a thing called hypervigilance, where you're always like looking at angles. Like I go into restaurants, I'll look for exit signs just in case things happen. It's just
I do
the
that.
mindset. Yeah, so
I always
it
have
just
to have an exit
stinks.
plan.
And like I'm always like thinking like 2 or 3 steps ahead. My wife sometimes like, well, just like relax. The kids are gonna be fine. Like, well, they could hit that and not fall, and that would do. You know, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
But I finally just didn't care. I was like, oh, like just my mind relaxed. It was really nice.
That's amazing.
Huge relief.
Yeah. And that was, what do you think really, like, was your friend just finally that day, you were just like, I have had it today?
Yeah, it was another Marine, and like a lot of the guys were all talking about
Yeah.
it. And it's kind of funny, like the same group of guys that are all now doing like, the guy went and did some DMT stuff and ayahuasca. You know, my one buddy told me a story like, you know, not to get too deep, but it's like, when you're in combat and like your buddy gets vaporized by an IED or something, it's like you kind of squeegee them up and you continue with the mission. We compartmentalize a lot of
What
things.
does that mean, vaporized? I'm sorry.
Just
I
they become
actually
mist,
don't.
like gone.
That's literally what happens?
Yeah, like they just break up a lot of parts and it's gnarly. But he's like, his wife became like a medicine woman level 2 or something with this stuff out in Colorado. So he's like, she took a little bit of a trip. He's like, I took it like like a deep trip. And he's like, she's laughing, having a good time. He's like, I'm on the ground crying for 4 hours. But he's like, when I woke up, it was like the best moment of my life. He's like, because I kind of had to process all my friends I lost. And it was my way of mourning things and kind of getting through it. And he's like, and I just felt really great about it. I mean, I had another buddy, you know, it was like crazy because like you probably heard Joe Rogan talk about the time he did DMT and like the Joker cards kept flipping in front of him saying, fuck you. And he's like, and finally I realized I was taking myself too serious. And he's like, but he talked about how vivid it was. And he's like, it was more vivid than like anything on this earth. And my buddy went and did some things up in the mountains of Idaho. And they did a couple nights of this stuff. And he's like, dude, like he just went into such a deep place and talked to people he hasn't talked to or people he lost. And he's like, it literally was so realistic and said, there's something else you need to be doing in your career. And stuff like that. So we're gonna bring him on to here. He was actually I was trying to get him to come down here, but he couldn't make it today. But we'll
have you guys.
But yeah, he just said he's like, dude, during that trip, it was just like it kind of gave me clarity. I mean, I've had guys who were raging alcoholics. They do that one time,
and that was DMT.
DMT to do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Guys were doing all this stuff, and they were like, you kind of do it monthly, then you're down to it like every 6 months, and you're down to it once a year. It's like a reset button for your brain.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. And so, all the stuff with the cannabis thing that's why I kind of love being in the special ops community. It's like critical thinking is a must and outside the box thinking, and don't be cookie cutter. Like Marine Corps is very much like wear your gear this way. I'm like, guys, I don't care if you put your magazine on top of your head. As long as you get to your gun, I don't care. Just you got to get rounds down range. So it's very open, and guys are very open to new ideas and try new things. And it's kind of funny how a lot of the special ops guys I know are experimenting with this stuff and finding really great results.
Yeah, because you're so conditioned, I'm sure, to be a certain way.
Well, yeah, I mean, they would like drop us off in spots where it's like, hey, there's something bad happening here. We don't know who it is and when it's happening, but you guys got to figure it out. And you're kind of like,
Jesus.
all right, you kind of do your thing. So that's kind of what makes cannabis so fun. We're like navigating the system as we're making the rules as we're going along with it. It's pretty good.
We're in the Wild West, but
Absolutely.
I mean, even just now, where we're at now from a few years back, it's like, it's still the Wild West.
Yeah.
But we've come so far in such a short amount of time.
No, it's a snowball going down the hill. It's just picking up momentum and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like we were talking to one senator out in Arizona, and it's like you're looking at this poll, and I'm like talking to his office, and I'm like, do you know that 81% of the people in Arizona polled said they would support the VA giving medical cannabis to veterans? And I'm like, in this day and age, you can't get 81% of Americans to say Monday happens on a Monday. So I'm like, I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we got to kind of look at this. And I'm like, I mean, that's where you just say it's like sometimes that big money is just kind of telling the politician what they can and can't do.
Right.
Unfortunate.
Also, I know this is a little random, but can we talk about the fact that this J isn't finished yet, how slowly it's burning?
Yeah, this is
and there's three of us smoking it.
This is a great joint. So shout out.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I joke that
I'm. This is good.
I'm good too. I don't.
Yeah, I think
I don't even need anymore.
But I feel like I'm a blunt girl because mostly because J's burn too fast, and I get irritated because I like to smoke with people. That's half the fun, right?
Yep.
And then usually you have 3 people, it's done in 2 or 3 minutes, and you're like, great, I had like 2 hits of that.
It's so funny. Well, thank you so much.
Yes,
No, too easy.
Thank you
no,
so
anytime.
much.
Sharing your
Had a lot
story.
of fun for sure.
Yeah, everybody go check out Hellman Valley. You can find them in shops throughout the state of California. Hopefully some other
Nationwide
states
soon.
Depending. But yeah, check out Bryan. Check out everything that they're doing. Really cool stuff. And thanks for checking out our episode.
You know